Okay, in this video I want to talk a little bit about hole sawing. If in some places it may not be quite advisable to go and do your hole sawing. So what I did here, I created one rectangle, and that one is 3 by 1 inch roughly, or 74 by 27 millimeters. And I made 6 duplicates, and in this one I made a rectangle hole sawing, and that rectangle that is roughly 40 millimeters by 5.5, and the same for that one. And the smaller cutouts what I did in there, they are roughly 2.5 millimeters wide and 12 millimeters high. So you can consider that a kind of for if you're digitizing some satin stitches or using some text. Should I use hole sewing or not? And what I want to show you here is if you're using a different stitch angle on a different stitch count that you get. So on this first one, if we go extension, ink stitch, paramps, and I'm gonna be using just I'm not gonna change any of the settings. I'm using on all of them the same default, and then I can see here I have 40 111, and so I can go apply and quit. So the first one, that is a 0-degree angle, and we have 4111 stitches. Now the second one, we go to the paramps, ink stitch, paramps, and on this one I will go and change the angle to 90 degrees, and then we can see we have 4375. So on the second one, 90 degrees and 4375 stitches. Now we're gonna go and create a hole in there, and we are gonna be using on this one the same setting as on the first one. So we go extension, ink stitch, paramps, and the angle 0, and we have 4060. Apply and quit. So the second one, that is at 0 degrees and 4060. So now you can see we have reduced the stitch count by 100 stitches roughly, or not even, only 50 stitches. Now we go onto this one, and now we go and change it to a 90 degree. Extension, ink stitch, paramps, and we change the angle of the stitches to 90, and we go and apply and quit, and on that one we get 4570 stitches. So there you can see now we have the same size of the rectangle, but with a hole cut in it. And if we compare it with a 90 degrees on this one, we have increased the stitch count by 200, but we have made a hole in there. And the reason for that is because we're gonna end up with a lot of short stitches here along the edge and here along the edge. But here on the stitch angle at 0 degrees, So that means the stitches are gonna be running from left to right and right to left. We only gonna have here on the left side some short stitches and on this side some short stitches. So we are decreasing the stitch count because of that. Now that we're going here on the 90 degrees, we are sewing up and down, so we are creating a lot of short stitches along this edge and on this edge. And if we are gonna be sewing a satin stitch or some text over top, we can end up with some issues on the back side, or not a really clean sew out on the back side, because we end up with a lot of needle penetrations along the edges here. So that is things to take in consideration. Then we go to this rectangle. So there I created a few more small rectangles, and those are 2.5 mil by 12 mil high. So now we're gonna go and apply, I better select it, extension, ink stitch, paramps. And like I say, I'm not changing any of the settings here. This one is at 0 degrees, apply and quit. And there we end up at 0 degrees, and we end up with 4,500 stitches. So there you can see we have an increase from the original here. We have increased the stitch count by 400. Now we're gonna go to the 90 degree one, extension, ink stitch, paramps. And now we'll change the stitch angle to 90 degrees. And we go and apply and quit. And there we can see we have at the 90 degrees, we get all of a sudden, we get 4,700 stitches. So if we compare that with a complete solid one, we have an increased stitch count by over 300 stitches. And the reason for that also is because at a 90 degrees, I'm kind of surprised that here on the 0 count that it's only 4,500, but that may also have to do with where these rectangles where the holes all exactly line up for the distance in between in comparison with the stitch length. But here at a 90 degrees we can see that the stitch count has all of a sudden increased to 4,700. And in some ways I find that a little strange, but it is what it is. But there you can see between the 0 degrees and the 90 degrees, with just small holes in there, we can have an increase of quite a few stitches. And all the stitching increase, most of the time if you're selling designs or do digitizing for somebody else, it goes by stitch count. This is also so you could reduce the price that way. Also, your stitch out of the design may end up being better because of not hole sewing. Also, it will decrease the time of sewing, because 600 stitches less, depending on the speed of your machine, that will all make a difference. So really be considerate on Should I use hole sewing or shouldn't I? And here too, you're gonna end up with a lot of short stitches right around the shape, and that is why often we create the text over top of a filled area instead of creating hole sewing. So I hope this video is gonna be informative for you, and be considerate on when you are creating. Should I do hole sewing or should I skip it? Okay, thanks for watching and have fun and take care.